You won't believe what some people choose to be offended by. After 18 hours of removing a tumor from a child's brain, I came home to find a woman standing in my driveway, measuring the distance from my chicken coop to the property line with a neon tape measure, at 6:30 in the morning. But let me back up. I'm Dr. Zora Wilkins, neurosurgeon at Mercy Medical Center. After working 80-hour weeks in a cramped downtown apartment for 7 years, I finally bought my dream home in Magnolia Estates, a quiet, upscale suburb with tree-lined streets and enough yard space for me to garden. What I didn't expect was how quickly I'd fall in love with keeping chickens. It started on a whim after a particularly grueling week of surgeries. I thought dogs need walking, cats are judgy enough, and fish don't make breakfast. 3 hens seemed perfect, low maintenance, fresh eggs, and just enough personality to entertain me when I wasn't reconstructing someone's cerebral cortex. So I built a coop, not some ramshackle eyesore, but an architecturally designed structure that matched my craftsman home right down to the paint color. My 3 ordinary hens, Henny, Cluck Norris, and Winston Churchill, quickly became part of my routine. There's something surprisingly peaceful about collecting warm eggs at sunrise before heading to the hospital, or watching chicken drama unfold after a day of life and death decisions. The neighbors seemed to love them too. Mrs. Abernathy from next door would bring her grandchildren over to collect eggs on weekends. Mr. Patterson across the street would save kitchen scraps for the girls. Even the mailman started carrying chicken treats in his bag. For almost a year, it was suburban bliss. Then Hurricane Karen made landfall. Karen Williams moved into the Colonial across the street with 3 SUVs, a live, laugh, love doormat, and what appeared to be a comprehensive list of complaints about Magnolia Estates that she'd compiled before her moving boxes were even unpacked. I first met Karen when I heard someone pounding on my front door at 7 a.m. on a Sunday. Not knocking, pounding like the police with a warrant. I opened the door, still in my pajamas, to find a woman I'd never seen before, already mid-sentence, as if she'd been practicing her outrage for hours. And who keeps farm animals in estates? This isn't the countryside. Her voice carried across 3 lawns. She was impeccably dressed for 7 a.m. on a Sunday, with highlighted hair styled into what I can only describe as a tactical bob, weaponized to intimidate retail managers across the county. I blinked at her, genuinely confused. I'm sorry, who are you? Karen Williams. I moved in last month. And there are standards in this neighborhood. She practically spat the word standards, gesturing wildly toward my backyard. Those farm animals don't belong here. I followed her pointing finger, expecting to see cows or pigs I didn't know about. But no, she meant my 3 hens, quietly pecking in their enclosure. They're just chickens, I explained slowly. 3 hens. They're permitted by county ordinance. Karen's eyes narrowed as she took in my Harvard Medical School t-shirt, the expensive car in my driveway, the meticulously maintained front yard. Something in her expression shifted, like she was recalculating. Well, Dr. Wilkins. Zora Wilkins. Dr. Wilkins. I've already documented multiple noise complaints from neighbors about those chickens. This was news to me, especially since roosters are the noisy ones, and I only had hens. Which neighbors? I asked. Karen's smile tightened. That's confidential. But the HOA will be hearing about this. As she marched back to her house, I noticed several neighbors watching from their porches, coffee cups in hand. Mr. Patterson caught my eye and pantomimed a chicken dance, then rolled his eyes toward Karen's retreating figure. Little did I know this was just the opening act in what would become the Great Chicken War of Magnolia Estates, a 6-month battle that would eventually involve emotional support animal certifications, secret surveillance, and one woman's spectacular public downfall. If you've ever dealt with an entitled neighbor who made it their mission to police your perfectly reasonable life choices, hit subscribe, because trust me, this story has a karma payoff that's too delicious to miss. And I'm curious, what's the most ridiculous thing a neighbor has ever complained about at your home? Drop it in the comments. I guarantee mine tops it, but I'd love to know I'm not alone in neighbor nightmare land. Karen's crusade against my chickens escalated with alarming speed and truly impressive dedication. Within days, she'd appointed herself as Magnolia Estates' unofficial poultry police. I'd catch her standing at the edge of my property, clipboard in hand, meticulously documenting each cluck and peck as if gathering evidence for a murder trial. Her first official line of attack focused on noise complaints. This was puzzling since hens are remarkably quiet birds. But Karen was nothing if not committed to her cause. One afternoon, I returned from a 12-hour surgery to find her measuring decibel levels outside my coop with an app on her phone. When she noticed me watching, she quickly photographed a particularly menacing head tilt from Winston Churchill before speed-walking back to her house. The evidence-gathering phase quickly gave way to community outreach, Karen style. Glossy flyers began appearing on doorsteps throughout Magnolia Estates, warning neighbors about the public health emergency in their midst. Complete with clip art of disease-carrying flies and alarmist bullets about avian flu, salmonella, and something called chicken dust that supposedly caused immediate respiratory distress. At the bottom of each flyer, concerned? Contact Karen Williams, neighborhood safety advocate. When flyers failed to rally sufficient neighborhood outrage, Karen escalated to neighborhood watch meetings in her living room. Urgent, agricultural hazard discussion. Read the invitations. My surgical nurse, who lived 2 streets over, reported that exactly 4 people attended, mostly for the promised free wine and cheese. The logical approach seemed worth trying. I packaged a dozen fresh eggs in a handmade basket with a note, "From my girls to you, enjoy." My doorbell camera later captured Karen accepting the basket with a tight smile, walking to her car, and immediately dumping the entire thing into her garbage can while checking to ensure no one was watching. By week 3, Karen had created a 36-page chicken documentation dossier that she proudly displayed during chance encounters at the mailbox. It contained daily chicken activity logs, coop proximity measurements, and, most impressively, a cross-reference spreadsheet of alleged chicken sightings beyond the confines of my yard. The only problem? My chickens had never left my property. She had apparently mistaken a neighbor's garden statue for Henny. Karen's election to the HOA board marked a dangerous turning point in our chicken saga. Having failed to generate community outrage through flyers and surveillance, she now had institutional power on her side. She won her position through a combination of aggressive campaigning and the simple fact that nobody else wanted the job. At her first meeting, she proposed a review of all neighborhood bylaws to ensure consistent enforcement of standards. Innocent enough, except I knew exactly what standards she was targeting. 3 days later, I received an official-looking envelope on HOA letterhead. Inside was a notice citing Bylaw 12.7, enacted in 1997, prohibiting agricultural activities within the residential confines of Magnolia Estates. The notice gave me 30 days to remedy the violation or face daily fines of $100. The ridiculous part? This bylaw had been created to prevent a previous resident from starting a commercial vegetable farm in his front yard. It had never been applied to pet chickens. I tried the reasonable approach first, emailing the HOA board with county ordinance information confirming backyard hens were perfectly legal in our area. Their response, clearly written by Karen, explained that HOAs could enforce stricter standards than county regulations. When I requested a special hearing, Karen called an emergency board meeting specifically about what she termed the chicken situation at 427 Oakwood Drive. The date? Conveniently scheduled during a 36-hour shift I couldn't possibly miss. I asked to reschedule. Request denied. I sent comprehensive documentation about my chickens. Documentation misplaced. I gathered testimonials from neighboring houses. Testimonials deemed irrelevant to the bylaw violation. The meeting proceeded without me. A friend of mine, Mr. Rivera, attended and reported back that Karen had prepared a full PowerPoint presentation titled Agricultural Threats to Residential Standards. It featured dramatically enlarged photos of chicken droppings labeled biohazard, speculative charts showing property value decline correlated with proximity to poultry, and, most absurdly, a slide comparing my 3 hens to industrial factory farming operations. The vote was 4-3 in favor of enforcing the bylaw. The chickens had to go. When I finally got home after saving a 16-year-old car accident victim, I found another official notice taped to my door. This one had a countdown calendar attached, chicken removal, 30 days remaining. I sat on my back steps, watching Henny cluck and Winston peacefully scratching for bugs, completely unaware of the bureaucratic storm surrounding them. After 18 hours of high-stakes neurosurgery, this petty crusade felt both exhausting and surreal. That's when I remembered something a colleague had mentioned weeks earlier during a coffee break. Something about her brother's emotional support iguana and housing protections. The idea hit me while I was stress cleaning my already immaculate kitchen at 2 a.m., unable to sleep after receiving Karen's countdown calendar. Emotional support chickens. I actually laughed out loud. It sounded ridiculous, Exactly the kind of absurd solution needed to fight Karen's absurd campaign. Dr. Sharma's casual comment during a coffee break last month suddenly replayed in my mind. My brother registered his iguana as an emotional support animal when his condo tried to enforce their no pets policy. The HOA backed down immediately. At the time, ID dismissed it as gaming the system. I knew emotional support animals provided genuine comfort to people with real needs. My chickens were just chickens, regular backyard hens that happened to lay eggs and occasionally judge my fashion choices. But as I stared at Karen's countdown calendar, complete with chicken clip art and red X marks for each day, the idea took root. I opened my laptop and fell down a research rabbit hole. Turns out, emotional support animals weren't limited to traditional pets like dogs and cats. The Fair Housing Act protections extended to a wide variety of animals, including chickens, if they provided comfort and support to their owners. The more I read, the more plausible it seemed. The registration process was surprisingly straightforward. Documentation from a licensed mental health professional confirming the animal provided genuine support for a person's well-being. Was it taking advantage of a system designed for people with genuine needs? I pondered this as I scrolled through page after page of ESA requirements. But then I remembered Karen measuring my coop at dawn, her doctored photographs, her deliberate scheduling of meetings when I couldn't attend. Fighting absurdity with absurdity seemed not just fair but necessary. Around 4 a.m., I found myself browsing a website selling official-looking ESA vests sized for chickens. ID officially entered the absurd zone. I closed my laptop and went to bed, still uncertain. The next morning, as I collected fresh eggs before my hospital shift, the solution felt both ridiculous and perfect. That afternoon, during a rare break between surgeries, I called my friend Dr. Lena Morgan, a psychiatrist at the hospital. "Let me get this straight," she said after I explained my situation. "Your neighbor has launched a full-scale campaign against your chickens, manipulated the HOA, and now you're considering registering them as emotional support animals?" "Yes," I admitted. "It sounds ridiculous." "I know. Actually, it's brilliant. And technically legitimate," she explained. After the stress of my surgical schedule, having a calming routine like caring for chickens genuinely could be considered supportive to mental well-being. Plus, she added, it's the perfect way to fight bureaucratic nonsense with its own tools. 2 days later, I had an official letter on hospital letterhead confirming that my chickens provided significant emotional support and recommending they remain in my care. I submitted the ESA registration online, complete with individual photos of Henny, Cluck, and Wingston. Karen's next countdown calendar arrived promptly. Chicken removal. 20 days remaining, decorated with even larger red X marks. I placed it next to the envelope containing my newly arrived ESA certificates, feeling a strange mix of embarrassment and triumph. My perfectly ordinary chickens had just become legally protected emotional support animals. The absurdity had come full circle. You'd think having official emotional support animal documentation would be the end of the story. But for Karen, it was just the beginning of a new phase in our increasingly absurd chicken war. I taped copies of my ESA certificates to the chicken coop, partly as a genuine notification and partly, I admit, to see Karen's reaction. My security cameras captured that priceless moment. Karen approaching for her morning documentation session, noticing the certificates, and performing what I can only describe as a full-body double take. She took several close-up photos of the certificates, made a frantic phone call while gesturing wildly, then practically sprinted back to her house. If you're still watching this video, please comment "ridiculous but perfect" to let me know you're here. Your support helps us to continue creating good content like this to entertain you. And if you haven't subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. The next day, I received 3 separate emails from the HOA, all clearly written by Karen, requesting verification of ESA legitimacy and additional documentation regarding therapeutic necessity. I forwarded Dr. Morgan's letter and federal housing regulations regarding ESA protections. Karen's response was a master class in doubling down. My doorbell camera caught her delivering an envelope containing a 14-page document titled HOA Policy on Non-Traditional Support Animals, which she had apparently created overnight. The policy required minimum 30-day assessment periods, community impact statements, and monthly hygiene certifications. When I forwarded this document to my attorney cousin Jason, his response was a single sentence: This document has the legal weight of used toilet paper. Not to be deterred, Karen escalated to surveillance levels that bordered on performance art. My security cameras captured her documenting the chickens' every move, sometimes for hours, seemingly trying to catch them engaging in non-supportive behavior. What exactly she thought that would look like remains a mystery. The breaking point came when Karen crossed the line from absurd to genuinely concerning. She called the hospital where I worked, asking to speak to the chief of neurosurgery about my unhygienic hobbies and how they might impact patient care. Fortunately, Dr. Harrison had known me for years and recognized the call for what it was: harassment. In the meantime, I leaned fully into the ESA designation. I ordered 3 tiny, perfectly legitimate ESA vests for the chickens. I updated their coop sign to read Emotional Support Chicken Residents. I even created laminated ID cards for each chicken with their names and registration numbers. Was this petty? Perhaps. Effective? Absolutely. Karen's campaign began showing cracks. Other board members started distancing themselves after her hospital call crossed a line. Neighbors who had remained neutral now openly sided with me. When I received notice of another emergency HOA meeting, this one specifically about ESA verification procedures, I rearranged my surgical schedule to ensure I could attend. It was time to end this once and for all. The HOA community room was packed beyond capacity for what everyone now called the Chicken Showdown. Extra chairs had been brought in, and people were standing along the walls. Apparently, nothing draws a crowd quite like neighborhood drama. Karen arrived with a rolling briefcase, 3 large binders, and what appeared to be a professional presentation clicker. I came with a single folder containing my ESA documentation, Fair Housing Act regulations, and, my secret weapon, printed screenshots from my security cameras showing Karen's increasingly unhinged surveillance activities. Board President Tom Miller, looking like he deeply regretted his volunteer position, called the meeting to order. Tonight we're addressing the emotional support chicken situation at 427 Oakwood Drive. Karen immediately requested to present first. Her presentation was exactly as over-the-top as ID expected: 30 slides detailing enforcement procedures for questionable ESA claims and community standards regarding livestock regardless of designation. The room remained silent through most of it, except for a few poorly concealed laughs at how ridiculous her claims were. When my turn came, I kept it simple. I'm Dr. Zora Wilkins. I've lived in Magnolia Estates for 2 years. I keep 3 hens in a clean, well-maintained coop that exceeds all county requirements. They're quiet, they're contained, and yes, they're now registered as emotional support animals. I placed my documentation on the table. These registrations are legitimate and protected under the Fair Housing Act. The HOA legally cannot enforce removal of emotional support animals regardless of species. I paused, then played my trump card. I'd also like to address the ongoing harassment I've experienced. I passed out my security camera screenshots: Karen measuring my coop at dawn, Karen photographing my chickens, Karen dumping my piece, offering eggs into the trash, Karen peeking over my fence during my hospital shifts. In the past month alone, Ms. Williams has entered my property without permission 7 times. She has called my workplace, attempting to jeopardize my career. And she has targeted my chickens in a way that suggests this isn't really about bylaws at all. The room had grown very quiet. Karen shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. She's making a mockery of emotional support animals. These people always find loopholes around the rules. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees at her emphasis on these people. Tom cleared his throat uncomfortably. Ms. Williams, what exactly do you mean by these people? Karen's face flushed as she realized her mistake. I meant doctors. They think they're above the rules because of their degrees. But the damage was done. The real motivation behind her chicken crusade had slipped out, and everyone heard it. The HOA attorney, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. I should note that the Fair Housing Act protections for emotional support animals supersede HOA bylaws. Additionally, selective enforcement of bylaws against specific residents could potentially expose the association to legal liability. His emphasis on selective enforcement and legal liability wasn't subtle. The vote was swift, 6-1 in favor of recognizing the chicken's ESA status and closing the complaint. The lone dissenting vote was, of course, Karen's. As the meeting adjourned, Karen stormed out, already furiously typing on her phone. I received sympathetic nods and a few quiet congratulations from neighbors as I gathered my documents. The chicken war was officially over. But Karen's troubles were just beginning. Karen's defeat at the HOA meeting triggered what my mother would call a biblical level of pettiness. Having failed to remove my chickens, she turned her regulatory enthusiasm toward every other potential violation in the neighborhood. Overnight, violation notices appeared on doors throughout Magnolia Estates. Mrs. Chen's wind chimes were noise pollution. The Diaz family's basketball hoop was improperly secured. Mr. Peterson's bird feeder was encouraging wildlife. No infraction was too small for Karen's notice. Her sudden enforcement spree backfired spectacularly. Residents began filing counter-complaints, many directed at Karen's own property. And that's when karma delivered its masterstroke. The county inspector, responding to multiple complaints, discovered that Karen's immaculate home featured several substantial unpermitted renovations: an extended deck that encroached on setback requirements, a converted garage without proper electrical permits, and, most ironically, a decorative chicken weather vane that violated HOA aesthetic guidelines. The resulting fines totaled over $15,000. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in Karen's front yard. As summer turned to fall, the chicken war of Magnolia Estates became neighborhood legend. My 3 hens continued their peaceful existence, still wearing their ESA vests on special occasions, mostly to amuse the neighborhood children who now regularly visited. Karen and her husband sold their house at a modest loss to a lovely family with 2 young daughters who immediately asked if they could visit the chickens. Their first Saturday in the neighborhood, they came over with handmade chicken treats and spent an hour watching Henny, Cluck, and Wingston peck around the yard. "We've always wanted chickens," the mother confided. "Our last neighborhood didn't allow them." "Well," I replied, handing her daughter an egg still warm from the coop, "Magnolia Estates is very chicken-friendly these days." I still keep the ESA certificates framed in my home office, not because my perfectly ordinary chickens need them anymore, but as a reminder that sometimes the best way to fight absurdity is with its own tools. The moral of this story? Don't mess with a neurosurgeon's chickens. We're very precise about where we make cuts, whether in the operating room or in outdated HOA bylaws. And when the universe decides to serve karma, it occasionally comes with a side of scrambled eggs. If you found value in this exploration of accountability, privilege, and resilience in the face of prejudice, subscribe now to receive more stories like this. Thanks for listening.